That's a good
Love
point.
it.
That's a good point.
Love
Yeah,
it.
going back to that Ukrainian treatment, you could sense one drop of water on the hot rocks. You could sense that one drop. It was so intense.
How about when we go to Toronto in the fall, which we're planning on doing? How about we
Absolutely.
arrange for that?
I thought we were gonna, have a nice, soft conversation. You're over here throwing a bunch of steam around and now, hitting me.
Like we lived most of our lives not knowing anything about sauna. And that's such a sad existence, especially in these winter months in Minnesota.
Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta. Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta.
Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of The Upper Bench. Before we get started with this episode, we've got a couple of announcements we're really excited to share with you guys. The first one being our new partnership with Creamy Soaps. Risto, you got a bar? Yeah. Eero, I know yours is coming in the mail today.
Correct.
Risto, what do you know about Creamy Soaps?
Well, I'm actually excited that this is our first advertiser because advertising sometimes can be weird with podcasts. You don't know if the podcaster really liked the thing or if they're just advertising because they're getting money. But in this case, for Creamy Soaps, this is something that I've been using for years. Back when we got into sauna first, we discovered pine tar was kind of a traditional element for sauna. And so we started tracking down pine tar soaps and we used a bunch of different kinds, and this Creamy Soap brand was our favorite of the different ones that we used. So we started using it in the sauna to clean up, and then also just like for laundry or tough stains. It's a pretty good soap. And then we started giving it to people when we would go and visit as a thank you gift for inviting us to their sauna.
Absolutely. Eero, what makes soap and sauna go together?
I was just going to ask the same. It's like, why, why are we talking about soaps? So obviously, there's an agenda. We're talking about the same thing as why we are called the upper bench. Cleanliness and sauna go tightly together. So what would be a better product to promote at this stage than a good soap? And obviously, also, what is very close to my heart is the smell of tar. That and sauna, that equals summer, but obviously you can use this soap during the winter months as well. But it's a great choice.
Absolutely. And as Eero mentioned, I grabbed myself a bar of the double pine. This stuff smells amazing. We got simple packaging, recycled paper, made in the USA. I can't say anything bad about this soap. And that to me is the definition of a product that I want to stand behind. So if you're looking for a good bar of soap to go with your sauna ritual, we can't highly recommend enough Creamy Soaps. Check them out at creamysoaps.com. Use promo code Upper Bench on your first order for a discount.
This is about soap. This
Yeah,
is about sauna. This is what we're talking about.
We're planning a new trip, right? Actually, not a new trip, the first one. So, and then we're gonna go together to a foreign country this fall. So, Sam, can you light us up a little on this subject?
absolutely. So we have solidified dates for our first ever sauna meetup trip. We are going to go and have sauna with friends, meet some listeners, and just have a good old time. And as Eero mentioned, we are going to have to get some updated passports to do this because we are going to Toronto, Canada. Now, I believe we're going in November. Risto, what are those dates again?
Yeah, November 7th through the 10th. And if you're getting your tickets, you might want to fly out later on the 10th or in the morning on the 11th because we'll be having some activities on the 10th. But we're going to go up there, check out the Banya scene, which is really good in Toronto. Also, hopefully the Nordic kind of spa or the Finnish end of things, and have some good food in Toronto, and hopefully meet a few of you up there.
Absolutely. So if you guys haven't yet, take a look at our website, theupperbench.com. We've got, if you've got questions or if you've got suggestions and places that maybe we should hang out at or check out while we're there, please drop us a line on our website. Let us know that you're either going to be there, or maybe some suggestions. Hey, I'm not going to be there, but you really got to go have the dumplings down at wherever. So let us know. We'd love to hear your suggestions, and we'll make sure that you get a shout out when we're out and about. Welcome, everybody, to another episode here of the Upper Bench Sauna podcast. Here, as always, I'm here with Risto and Eero, and we do have an additional smiling face here. But Eero, you're joining us from quite a ways away. You're still over in Finland, correct?
I am here. Yeah, I'm in the Western Finnish archipelago, and we are. I've been at my aunt's house for a couple of weeks now, and unfortunately, we're going to go back to Helsinki on Sunday. But it's been a great trip so far, and lots and lots of sauna. The
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I love it, and the food has been great. A lot of different salmon, Baltic herring, you name them, bass, all kinds of fish, which I enjoy, and there's going to be some more of that even this evening. But anyway, so this gives me great pleasure to introduce our guests, even though they're not really guests. But Julie is a guest. But it was Christopher, i.e. Risto, who contacted me. Maybe, do you have any idea how many years back that was when you first contacted me? Maybe we're talking for maybe 8 years.
7, 8 years, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I immediately understood that this guy was for real. And but anyway, and we met in New York, and I met Julie also in New York City,
Yep.
albeit very, very briefly, but that was way back. So today we're going to be talking about your sauna journey, which we haven't done. We've done Sam's, we've done mine, but not yours. So let's start with the question, for Julie. How come you're so crazy? What went wrong? What's with the sauna thing?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's probably why Christopher and I get along so well. It's because I am a little crazy. I'm always up for an adventure. Whenever Christopher says, "Hey, I have an idea," I get really excited because I never know what he's going to say. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, and we just go with it. But I think that's why we get along. I think we're both a little crazy.
Oh,
I
that's
hear you.
amazing.
And so it was kind of your story starts with sauna. It was kind of a coincidence, right? Kind of a thing that you kind of bumped into. Christopher like bumped into a sauna somehow. So remind us, how did you get acquainted with sauna?
So it was about 8 years ago, and I think it was April, and we were going to visit Julie's brother in Madison, Wisconsin. And so we're coming with the Minnesota contingent over to visit him. By the time it's April in Minnesota, you're kind of frozen to the bone. You can never get warm. You're not really warm until sometime in July after it's been hot for a while. And so I asked Julie, we were looking for like an Airbnb to stay at. And I asked Julie, hey, the rental that we get, could we get one that has a sauna? And to that point in our marriage, we'd been married. How many years had we been married at that point? 9 years, 10 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Mm.
Our experience was using them a few times at like a hotel. And
Yep.
and I liked them, and she wasn't a big fan.
We would be at a hotel and be like, "I'm gonna go use the sauna. You want to go?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm just gonna stay and watch TV." That sounds disgusting. They were hard to breathe in. Sometimes they were kind of smelly and they were dark, and I didn't really, I don't know, it was just uncomfortable. And I have a little bit of asthma, so I just never felt like I could breathe really well in them. So
Not a very welcoming environment for especially somebody new to sauna and not knowing why that may or may not be good or bad for them.
And I just liked them because they were warm, but I didn't love them. I was okay if I didn't have access to one. So it was April, and I found a rental that had one. Now, this rental, it was kind of out in the outskirts of town. It was a house that was big enough to sleep all of us, but the lady lived down the road, kind of like a country road, and she had a little tiny electric sauna on the back of her house. So she said that guests could come and use it. and she said there was empty milk jugs that you could fill with water. We had no clue why you would need to fill any jugs with water.
I think I remember saying something like, well, maybe it's to humidify the air because you're not supposed to put water on an electric unit. So there's no way we're going to do anything with the water other than just let it sit on the floor, which is what we did. We had it sitting under the bench the entire time, humidifying the air. We didn't know.
Yeah, the only thing we knew is that it's a hot wooden place that you just sit and that you're not supposed to put water on the rocks. So we knew that.
It's such a shame. I mean, and how are you to know any better other than seeing the sign probably at the Y or at a, a crappy little hotel somewhere saying, "Don't put water on the rocks, please," from management.
Well, and it kind of made sense. It's electricity, electricity and water. We've all seen toasters being thrown into the bathtub scenes on movies. So, um,
I could see where it is. It's absolutely counterintuitive. You would think you're never going to take a cup of water and throw it inside of your stove. You're never gonna take a cup of water and just pour it over the top of your stovetop while you're cooking. And especially if you do have elements that are exposed, maybe not a glass top or gas or something like that. But it is absolutely counterintuitive. But once you realize that those elements are protected by a lot of rock mass, hopefully, you're really not putting water directly on those metal elements. You're getting it on the rocks, which is great. But how are you to know if you've never done it before? So hopefully we're here to open some eyes.
And then, we didn't know anything about bathing in a sauna. So there was no way we were pouring water on ourselves to do anything with that. So that wasn't even anywhere near our concept of what we were doing.
yeah. So it was a small kit, just electric. I don't even know how hot it got. The bench was pretty low. So there's quite a bit of overhead space, and we didn't create any steam. So we just sat in there and we talked. And it was kind of at a difficult point in our marriage. So it was a good time for us to connect and chat with each other.
Yep.
And after we did it in the evening, we'd put the kids down to bed, and we went and they were younger. We have 4 kids, and we put them down to bed, and then we went and saunaed or just sat in this hot box, and then we were in our swimsuits.
Yep.
And then we're going to walk back late at night, and I thought this is going to be pretty terrible because we're going to be hot and it's going to be cool outside, like in the low 40s, and that contrast between the hot and cold is going to make the cold feel even colder.
Yeah.
So we're walking back, the moon is out, it's cold outside.
I think we both started walking like really briskly, like, oh, we got to get back to the house. It's going to be so, so cold. And then a third of the way down the block, we both kind of like slowed down and we're like, wait, this feels actually pretty nice. And like you could see like the trail of steam behind us, and it was a quiet road, so there were no cars, no street lights. I think it was almost a full moon, so it was just the moonlight, and we were walking, and for me, I just felt like so like invigorated. It was like I'd just worked out, and you hit like the nice cool air in front of like an air conditioner or something, and it feels good. You've got those good hormones going or whatever, and it's just like, oh, this feels nice.
And it didn't feel like crazy nice, but it felt good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I
It's
mean,
go-
and I suppose too, I mean, that's a step up from any hotel experience. That's a step up from any Y. That's a step up from a lot of things, especially it's just the two of you. I mean, that's a great moment, being under the moonlight, cool and kind of you're both in a very vulnerable, hey, unknown, spot. You didn't know what to expect when you got out of that sauna and walked back to the house. So, what a great experience for you both to discover something that you both enjoy. So, no, that's very cool. Eero, when was the first time you ever stepped out into like just a snowy, cold after sauna weather experience?
I don't know because obviously I was so small that I
You were just born right into it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But isn't it's interesting. It's extremely interesting that how lucky you guys were in a way because that outdoor, experience at the same time, the kind of a thing that we ad nauseum we talk about at the Upper Beds podcast is the thing that it's not the hot room is has a lot to do with it, but it's not that alone. And so you kind of you were so lucky with having that experience and right from the start. And also I know a lot of people in North America who actually own a sauna have never had that endorphins flowing feeling, that natural high. And you got that. That was the second night you were trying out the thing that you didn't know, and you got that endorphin high, right?
I wouldn't say that we got the sauna high. We just got a little taste of the feel good from the contrast. To be honest, that wasn't enough to really hook us. It's not like we were hooked after that time. So we got back to where we were staying, to our room, and we were getting ready for bed. And I'm an inquisitive person, so I like to understand the world around me and discover new things. I was just curious, where did sauna come from? So I Googled it, and that was really kind of the start of our path right there. I was telling Julie as she's getting ready for bed, I was like, "Hey, honey, I don't know if you knew this, but sauna comes from Finland."
I was like, where's Finland?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, and it's actually pronounced sauna, and you are supposed to put water on the rocks, and they have some that are heated with a wood stove. So it was like this whole world just started to open up.
And we're literally laying in bed, and I'm not a night person. Like, I'm more of a morning person, so my brain's already shut down after the sauna, after a cold shower. I'm in bed, and I'm just like, okay, hon, okay, have to sleep.
So we've been talking about doing a getaway, just the two of us.
Mhm.
And so I was like, what would you think about going to try one of these saunas, I mean, saunas that have a wood burning stove and see what that's like?
And I'm like, sure, sure,
Yeah, just agreeing to whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
So that was really the start of our trail. And actually, we have a family podcast called the Sauna Trail. So then the next thing was that I found a place in northern Wisconsin, and we went and visited that, and we got closer to the Finnish practice. There was no cold plunge or anything, but it was a wood burning stove, and we made steam and did multiple rounds. And it was after that one that I think we both decided, yeah, we like this.
Yeah.
It's interesting in so many different levels because coming back to, you were asking me, when I remember my first, jump into the snow or something, and I don't have a clue, but coming to the present day, what's going on right now. So my wife and I have been in Finland now together for about 2.5 weeks, and I think we've done sauna at least 14 times together during this trip. And it's just like relationships go up and down and everything, but it's a huge thing to be venting, talking about life, going through things. And where else are you gonna really do that? That the hot box, that the hot room, and taking breaks and whatnot. It's so again, we talk about this community kind of a thing, but it's not only community, it's also a relationship kind of a thing that goes on with that. And that's something that we try to teach people at the podcast, but it's extremely difficult. So how would we go about explaining to people what you guys are experiencing right now?
I think one of the biggest things for me was, we'd been married for 10 years. We had 4 small kids. I was stay-at-home mom. Christopher worked. And, um, I think life just gets the better of you, the day to day, and we forget to take time for each other. And so I think I enjoy like traveling and going to new places, and so does Christopher. And so, but we hadn't done that for a while, and so this was kind of like a getaway to a new place with a new experience. And we both really enjoyed it. And I think for me, as a young mom, you're constantly worried, like, where are the kids? What are they doing? And this getaway for me mentally was a break to just not be a mom and not worry where the kids are. And we could just do the sauna and not worry about, like, oh, I've been in here for like half an hour. What are the kids doing? And I could really just relax. And I think that helped too, then, to be able to focus on what's going on between the two of us and having conversations. And then when you feel so good after those first couple rounds, and you're eating some good food, or you're having, a nice lemonade or something, like, it's hard to stay mad at him for whatever issues I have, because you feel so good. And so, like, I can talk about whatever it is that I'm frustrated about without actually being frustrated, and that kind of like breaks down those grudges or those barriers that have built up. And, it's not like we broke down all of the barriers that first getaway. I think it takes time, but sauna was like the space where we could actually do that without fighting, you know.
Nobody raises their voice in a sauna.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you want to, sometimes it might be a little hard, especially how hot it is now. I mean, yeah, I've heard, and then you guys' whole family now is into this. And just correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard Risto say that you and your mom can really get the steam going. So you have learned to take them out from underneath the bench and throw them around now.
Yeah, my mom handles heat better than anybody else I've ever sauned with. Like, she is never the first one to leave. She is like, I'll be in there, just the two of us, and I'll be like, okay, I can hang on just a little bit longer, mom, but I'm gonna have to go out. She's just like, okay. And then I'm like, okay, I gotta go, mom. She's like, okay, I'll go with you. And she's like, never, like, she's never like, I gotta go. I'm like, okay, mom, I gotta go if you want to stay here. But she doesn't like to sauna by herself. She doesn't like to be in there alone. And so she always comes, you know, once in a while she'll stay in a little bit longer after I do or the last person, but she outlasts everybody.
And she's
So
a petite 4'11" Cambodian lady, not someone you would expect that from.
So do you guys now find that you have those rich conversations with your family members as well too? Now, that you've kind of found out what sauna is all about and connected a little more richly with each other and are building this thing together now. What are those conversations like, and how do you think that they are better with strangers in the sauna that you introduce?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not just with family, but also with friends and even new people that we invite. We had some people over. I had started during COVID. I started sounding with LDS missionaries just kind of accidentally. So every week I would be sounding with 6 different 19-year-old guys, many of them from Utah. But I told them, after you're done with your 2 years, you're welcome to come back, visit us anytime. And so one of them took us up on the offer, and he brought his parents with him. And so we got a chance to introduce them, which was a great pleasure. But the mother, she was saying to Julie as they were sounding, she never really opens up to people that quickly. There's something about when you're in the sauna, it helps strip away some of those inhibitions. And in our society, we don't really have the space to just sit and do nothing and communicate with each other. The front porch kind of thing is gone, and people don't do dinner parties necessarily as often.
Oh, 100%. I think the communities. I would love to do a big sociological, study on the communities that have a higher sauna usage, or per capita, whatever that is. And see what type of metrics, what kind of correlations are there? Is there a reduced this? Is there an increased that? Once Chat GPT and all the AI algorithms out there finally lock us all down, we'll have really good data. And we'll be able to ask it, hopefully.
Yeah. There's been a few times where I've introduced ladies to it that I don't know. And I remember one lady, this is when we had our barrel sauna, and I invited her over because she did like a 40s fit blog thing, and she heard that I was into sauna. So she basically invited herself over. So I introduced it to her, and she showed up in like these cute, like high heeled flip flops, a cute little bathing suit. Um, I told her not to wear makeup, and I don't think she wore a lot of makeup, but I think she still had a little bit on. And then there's me in like my, I don't know, black, whatever. And after the second round, I could tell she switched her shoes to the more comfortable shoes. She had brought two pairs of flip flops. And so she had switched over to the more comfortable ones. from her, I could just sense the relaxation, the comfort of being in her own skin. Like she didn't care what she looked like. She didn't care how I perceived her. She was just enjoying going in the hot room, coming out, taking a shower, going into the cold plunge. And I think there's something just naturally disarming about sauna. And I don't know how to explain it, but you stop thinking about what other people think about you and you're just doing the activity.
Yeah. And yeah, you get the filter is taken off. You're
Mhm.
not putting on a show. You're in there for you first and foremost, and the people around you are usually people that you come to find out are great people. You're not sitting in a 6x9 box with somebody that you really don't want to be sitting in there with. This is a small space, so they've already passed the first test. They've already said yes to being crazy with you guys and jumping into a hot room. Yeah, who cares what you look like? Let your hair down and have a good time, because we're here to enjoy, some fellowship, and not so much what picture am I going to post to the gram to prove to everybody that I was here.
Right.
Can we name any like minimum requirements on that experience? Like, what happened to me today was pretty typical. I started heating up the wood burning heater in the sauna. It took me 40 minutes to get it hot. And I think we did today 3 rounds of sauna with my wife. And I think it was like maybe 1 hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, 50 minutes, somewhere there. I was not rushing things per se. I will have dinner later on after this podcast. But like, is there something, we were talking about smelly hot boxes and stuff like that, and so obviously there are some barriers there somewhere. But are there some minimum requirements where you can actually really enjoy your spouse? Talk about whatever, life or kids or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are minimum requirements. And actually, we just did a getaway a few weekends ago, and we got a place that had a barrel sauna and it had a small electric heater. So that was the first time that we've actually used a barrel with a small electric heater. So 8 years ago, we discovered sauna. After that, we wanted to have our own, but we didn't know what type to get. And so all of our vacation and free time went to going to use different saunas. So we've used over 100 now. Just recently, we hit 100. So a small electric barrel sauna, this was our first time. Would you say that it met our minimum requirements?
I would say it's borderline.
So why would you say it's borderline?
Well, it was interesting, the setup. So the barrel was actually inside a room. And the room was large. It had a high ceiling with a fan, and it had a cold shower. It had a shower. The ground was all like cement, so it was meant to get wet. So that was nice. But it felt really airtight. Like I couldn't
The
get
barrel.
the barrel. It
Yeah.
just felt very stuffy. It got hot-ish.
Yeah, not super hot.
And then it's interesting. I don't think I had realized until this trip how important it was to be outside. So we stepped out of that stuffy barrel into a room that was kind of stuffy, took a shower, and then we were able to go outside and sit on a few chairs that were out there. But that fresh air, there's just something so important about it that I didn't even realize until this last trip.
Yeah, so that sauna was interesting because it was close to that line for us.
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't think if we weren't already into sauna that it would have converted us to sauna, but it did have the ability to do multiple rounds and the ability to rinse and cool down and sit outside. The couple areas where it was mostly lacking, where it was kind of suspect, was like Julie said, the ventilation, and then the intensity of the heat was, if it doesn't cross a certain line of intensity, it's hard to feel like you're getting enough out of that experience.
Yeah, we would throw water on the rocks, and Christopher would have to like wave a towel so that we could get that steam to come down a little bit, because the stove actually was a little bit higher than like a wood burning was when we had our barrel, and so that heat just didn't come back. It didn't come down to our feet
Yeah.
very well.
Mhm.
Didn't hit you. I have to take a look if I can show you the story of sauna. Can you see the two benches and then the barbecue?
Yeah.
So this this is obviously sauna is over there, but
That's
that's where we take our breaks. That's the outdoors. That's the outdoors for you. Outdoors is extremely important.
And I think it was interesting, the one that we went to in Madison, it was attached to the back of their house. So the entrance went outside right away. So it wasn't like you went into a basement and then outside. It was like the door was an exterior door. And so I think that too made a difference. Like you come out from that hot, sweaty room into just immediate cool, fresh air. It's something, I can't even put it into words how nice that is.
And so you asked about the minimum. So there's a minimum line for us, but then there's also kind of like the ideal line, which is, we ended up building our own sauna, and our setup is good enough that we've had people that we introduced to sauna, some friends, and they were relatively new friends, but they came and sauned with us. And on the drive back to their house, they were discussing where to put a sauna in their backyard. And then that experience is the ability to go outside, adding a cold plunge, nice solid good heat, the fellowship that you talked about, Sam, beer, some food afterwards. And kind of my pro tip for people is it needs to be an intense experience. I don't want to introduce people and have it be just kind of a weak sauna. I really give them a good amount of heat and cold. But what I do is, like, after like the second round where they've had a good amount of heat and steam, the first round they usually can't lean into the heat. They can't really appreciate the heat. So, but the second or third round, people's minds are usually relaxed and they're like, okay, I'll survive in this human oven. So then they can relax and take a little bit more. And same with the cold plunge. What I'll do is after people get out of the cold plunge, I'll have them lay back on a chair that goes fairly flat and then put a warm towel over them,
Over their head.
over their whole body and their head. Yep. And then they're just like silent for like 5 minutes. And then you combine that with a meal afterwards and the good conversation that hooks people.
We have an apartment attached to the back of our house that we rented out recently to a pastor and his wife. They were in town helping another church. We didn't really see much of them, but we invited them to sauna towards the end of their stay. And, it was kind of a stressful trip for them. Like this was like a work thing for them. And we were eating dinner afterwards. And I think he said, the pastor, I think 3 or 4 times throughout the evening, he's like, "Man, I feel so relaxed." He's like, "Man, I really needed this." Like he was just so relaxed and just enjoying himself. And, I think our culture is so good at being busy and stressed out and high level anxiety that when we have these moments of relaxation, it's just mind blowing to us. And it's the exception rather than the norm.
Yeah.
I always thought, when I get out of a sauna, I feel so good. And what else can I equate this to? If you work in an email situation like a lot of us do, have you ever opened up your email and not had any new emails and that sense of relief and just, oh, I have no new emails. This is great. That's how sauna is. When you step out of sauna, there's no emails in the world. There's no notifications. There's no anything. You just feel good. You're fresh. You can start fresh. Nobody's waiting on you. So
Yeah.
I really do think that time to reset and just relax is unprecedentedly, and we need it more than ever, especially nowadays.
It's interesting that I've had that same experience, that there's been a couple of guys coming to Stamford, Connecticut to sauna bathe, to do sauna with us, and these guys are new, never ever tried sauna before, and around the third round they are hooked. So some people just get it immediately, and some people never ever. But it just takes that real sauna experience to get into the groove. But yeah, so there's so much misunderstanding still, and we always talk about this too. So there's so much misunderstanding, and how do you? Because people have very strong ideas of what a sauna is. which is based on a totally different kind of and we try to explain to people that there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a different kind of a thing, right? What's to be done?
I think for me, even as an introvert, I like to sauna alone quite often. So like we'll sauna as a family, and I usually do like 1 or 2 rounds by myself afterwards because I enjoy the quiet. But I think that the community aspect of it is so underrated. The fellowship that we get in that sauna, it's better than having a cup of coffee with a girlfriend. And I think when we sell, I think Christopher and I were just talking about this last night. I think Christopher said, if you sell a $2,000 box that you can put in your basement that seats one person, like that's not the whole experience. You miss out on those connections that we need in our life. I think we were meant to live in community, and we're so isolated now with our devices and social media. Like we think we're connected with people, but there's something about that face-to-face connection that happens in the sauna that I think does not get discussed or shared. And and I feel like you have to experience it. You can't just like talk about it. Like I think people have to experience it to really understand that, yeah, after I've met the parents of this missionary, she and I were in there and we were both talking about our struggles as moms and things, and she just was like, I don't know any other type of event or time in my life where I've opened up so quickly to somebody right now. Like I just met you half hour ago and I'm sharing with you some things that,
Yeah.
and like we could have had dinner and I don't think that conversation would have ever gone that way at all. I think we all long for that deep friendship and relationships, but we don't have a way of getting there. And so then we settle for what we can get on Facebook or TikTok. And so I think what can be done, I think having people experience the real Finnish sauna where it's like kids and families and wives and dads and uncles and grandpas, and they're all in it together and having fun and joking and then eating together. We don't do that often enough.
I agree 100%. We face a lot of technical discussions about, the CO2 levels inside the hot room and whatever, and they are very important. But at the same time, it's like we should go back to basics. And I'm kind of, what I'm looking for here is kind of most of the Americans or North Americans, they are one and done folks. That's a fact, and they have a very limited time frame to enjoy their heat therapy. And I was asking about the minimum requirements. I think there should be like a not a sand glass kind of a thing, or the opposite of a sand glass. Like there has to be like a minimum time that is being
Yeah.
spent, you know,
Yeah.
inside the hot room and the outside, so that you get to that level, of that enjoyment. How do you explain that to people?
You can't learn about sauna by buying a sauna. That's the big mistake we've made in North America. You learn about baseball by joining a baseball team, and I think it's the same with sauna. I think you learn about sauna by joining a sauna team. People that already have that part of their life, that's how we introduce people is you show up, drink water beforehand, make sure you don't have a bunch of deodorant.
For jewelry. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just show up. Just show up and we're gonna do it to you.
Well, and so many people are craving authentic experience with people, and I think that's why you see so many people open up in a sauna. They know it's real. That you're sitting there, you're exposed. It's you're on an even playing field. I think it's a lot easier to open up and be authentic with who you are when there's no hiding anything else. On that bench, but and the same goes for, I think, purchasing and experiencing sauna. How many craft artisan hamburgers are going to get made today? And then how many are going to be made by fast food restaurants? So there's always going to be like we talked about, the cheapo box that you buy online that you sit by yourself and yeah, you're almost there. Do you meet the minimum requirements? Maybe, maybe not. but how cool is it when you go to your favorite sports bar that has the double decker onion rings and fried this and bacon and cheese and that whole nine, right? And you're there and it's awesome. It's fun too because everybody watches it come out of the back and you're there with your buddies and you're having some beers and you're like, oh, there's no way you're going to finish that. And that whole thing makes it so much better. So you can have fast food or you can have a really fun, great artisan time, but you're going to have everything in between too. But a lot of that has to do with who you're doing it with, for sure.
I think that's a really good analogy, Sam, because I feel like some of those like single box units are kind of like eating fast food, but you're eating it by yourself in your car. You're getting
Yeah.
that burger, but it's like you said, it's not like with everybody there, and it's the quality
Yeah.
and all that.
I want to see like who takes a picture with their like McDonald's, their quarter pounder. Hey, look at this awesome meal that I got today. No, but when you go out and you order that really cool burger with the things sticking out of it, and then there's a chicken wing in the middle, people are putting that on Instagram, right? They think it's a work of art. It's really cool. A lot of people put in some time and some effort into this, so I'm gonna enjoy it. Yeah, it's cool.
So what's the road ahead? I'm talking about the sauna road ahead for you guys. What are you planning on maybe doing in the sauna? You're doing the podcast and but what no in the perfect world if there would be no obstacles with say finances or anything like that. So what do you guys want to do?
I mean, the podcast we did, it was actually mostly my idea, as the kids have gone through all of these travels with us, and we drag them along and make them meet new people and make them sauna with people they've never met before. Um, when we talk about the trips, like the things that they remember always surprised me. So then as a mom, I was like, I want to like talk about this with them. Like with each place that we went to, what do they remember? What did they think? What did they learn? And so then I was the one that kind of like was like, can we do this? And Christopher's like, yeah, I think so. And I think Christopher had already started at the upper bench. So I think he was the only one that really knew how much work this was. And so the kids were like, sure, we love you, mom. Yeah, we'll do it with you, sure. And then it's been a lot of work. And they've done a great job of it. We're taking a break right now, but we'll continue with that. We still have, quite a bit left to cover. And even if no one listens to it, it's mostly a project that I wanted for myself, that I could have a recording of my kids and their memories and what we did together as a family. So I don't care what happens to it. It's mostly for me. But we did talk about like, well, we'd love to go to Finland as a family. We all like to travel. We all like to go to new places. And so I think that would be something that we would all enjoy. That's something that is on my bucket list, I guess.
Yeah, and retelling those stories is lots of fun and will continue to be lots of fun. There's some crazy things that we've experienced along the way, like out in the backwoods where people have invited us to sauna in some super old log sauna, but the chimney parts aren't there and you have to reassemble the stovepipe and there's chickens
Oh
running
yeah.
around and I'm standing in a little pink towel in between rounds. Like there's all kinds of crazy, things that we've experienced. So it's fun to retell that. But like you said, Finland would be awesome. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, those would be great. Experiencing any new sauna is always a blast. We've had the chance to use one smoke sauna, but more smoke saunas would also be pretty cool.
Here, 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 here.
No,
Yes,
but hopefully
yes.
we'll be along for the ride because I know those are all on my list too. I would love to get over there and start experiencing some of these different things. And it's always fun to do with like-minded people.
Absolutely.
Definitely so. Interestingly, once again today, on the upper bench inside the sauna, my wife and I were talking, and she goes like, "We finally have to get a sauna of our own. We don't have one, and and it's just we don't have all the money or the time in the world, but yeah, one should have. You guys rebuilt your own sauna in your backyard, right?
Yeah, so, when we first got into sauna, we had to teach ourselves. There was no team to bring us into. So it was like reading books and stumbling our way through and thinking that we understood it and figuring out we didn't. And
Watching YouTube videos.
yeah, so it was a long process for us. And we didn't really have much yard. We were kind of in that same place, not much time, money, or space. But we ended up, our first sauna that we got was a used barrel sauna from Jeff Pizek. He was selling his used barrel sauna. So I went over to Wisconsin and got a U-Haul trailer, picked up the barrel. That's one nice thing about barrels, and just like moved it over. And it ended up going in our good friend's backyard. So we shared that sauna with them for a little while.
And they lived only like 4 blocks away.
Yeah,
So
in our neighborhood.
yeah.
And then we moved, so we didn't have a sauna again, and we were in Michigan, and we couldn't even put a barrel in our yard. We were renting. With our lease, we couldn't just add a sauna to the yard, especially a wood burning one. But we did find one on Craigslist that was a mobile sauna for a decent price. And the guy drove it down to where we lived. He was up in the UP, and in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and he drove it down to where we lived in the middle of Michigan, and we just put it in our driveway because it's a vehicle. There's nothing that says we can't have a vehicle in our driveway. So we used that while we were in Michigan, and then when we moved back to Minnesota, we sold that mobile one, and we finally built our own, which was kind of an experimental sauna. We wanted to build something that really got you up in the heat and the steam. So our hot room is 10 foot tall, and it's just one big platform for a bench. A lot of the older saunas that I'd seen drawings of had a platform up in the smoke sauna. So we wanted to try that. So our platform is 6 foot tall, 6 foot high, and you climb up a ladder and you sit up in this area that's all above the door.
The top 4 feet.
Yeah, and it's just cheap 4x4s for the walls, so you have a nice solid wood structure to absorb a lot of heat. And so we built that, and it was wonderful. This is the sauna that we've introduced lots of people to, to sauna in that sauna. But then we moved. We were renting that place, and we hadn't planned it very well. I should have built it on skids. Not too long ago, we disassembled it and brought it over to this place because it wasn't being used.
Yeah, my aunt actually bought the house. And she liked sauna, but she lives alone, and she was like, Julie, I've lived here in this house for a year and I've never used this. I'm probably just gonna buy one to have inside the house. So if you guys want to tear it down and move it, then I can use this backyard space for like a fire pit or something with my grandkids. We didn't build it to disassemble, and so it was a bear to disassemble and then reassemble. But we did, and it's been great. I'm glad that we have it. Because we didn't have one here at this house for a while.
That just has to just instill that blood, sweat, and just love and passion for that sauna. I'm sure that sauna now, you'll never probably be without at least a chunk of that sauna.
Yeah, if we move again, though, it's not moving with us. If there's any
Yeah.
talk of moving that thing with us, I'm lighting the stove and I'm lighting the sauna at the same time. It's coming with us in ashes if it does.
In a little
Yeah,
urn.
yeah, nice urn. Yep.
So it's yeah, we've been talking here almost an hour now, so Julie, do you have same kind of what's the word, I shouldn't say aspirations, but Risto, Christopher has done a lot of great stuff for the sauna in the United States and in North America. So he's been super active. Like I said, he contacted me about 8 years ago, and we've been corresponding ever since. And we started the upper bench a year and a half ago, I think, something like that, when Sam came along. But so Julie, you want to get your footprint besides the podcast to the sauna world?
I mean, I'm the one that does most of that, like social and like always wanting to tell people about the cool things I discovered. She's more likes to enjoy it and doesn't necessarily need to talk about it all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. He does all of the research and learns all the things, then he shares it with me, and then we go do it. So whether it's like tea or coffee or salsa, like he does all the research, he loves all of that, and then I just get to enjoy the rewards of whatever his research efforts are. So I would much rather go sauna than watch a video about sauna. I want to actually be in the heat instead of reading a book about it.
reaping all the benefits. No, that's good though, because Risto, I mean, if you didn't have Julie, I mean, would you want to go to these random saunas all the time by yourself? I mean, would it be as much fun?
It definitely wouldn't be as much fun, but I still would do it. I'm wired that way, Sam. Even
Yeah,
before we got married, I was always out there exploring, checking out new things, finding new parks in the area that that nobody knew about. So
But I
that's
think
awesome.
you like to explore with people.
I do.
Like he enjoys it much more when there's somebody with him to enjoy it with.
Oh yeah. Learn together, folks. Especially if you're interested in sauna and are nervous about, hey, I don't know what to do, or I don't know where to go, or who to ask, or whatever that is. Find somebody else that doesn't know anything either and go stumble a few times. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, you're gonna find some fun, cool people along the way.
Yeah, yeah. One of you can track down an oak Vita and the other one a birch one, and then you can try the different ones and see
Right.
what you like.
I love it.
No, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, and kind of a problem that I'm having is I'm always basically doing repeating the same thing, and you always should be more open, and we've covered it, many times, probably in the past, but I was lucky enough about maybe 7 8 years ago to go through this Ukrainian, this whisking kind of a thing, and it opened totally new avenues to the sauna world, to
Mhm.
my own sauna experience world. And but again, it's kind of it's kind of a problem that it's so special. We don't want to talk about these. It's kind of extreme thing, and when most of people who you think are in the know are still taking baby steps, and so you don't want to scare them off by telling
Yeah,
what kind of
yeah, then whipping them silly with with a Vita, or doing something crazy. Hey, I just came into this hot room. Now you're hitting me? This is no fun. What are you doing? Yeah, yeah. I thought we were gonna, have a nice, soft conversation. You're over here throwing a bunch of steam around and now hitting me. There are, different different levels and different avenues of sauna for sure, but they're all good. They're all good.
Going back to that Ukrainian treatment, you could sense one drop of water on the hot rocks. You could sense that one drop. It was so intense. Like normally, you can almost throw half a bucket, and okay, well, it's hot. But in that case, it's such an intense feeling.
Eero, where was that?
This was in Stamford, Connecticut,
And
and
that was at a private sauna, and then
yes,
someone that knew how to do it
yes,
came
yes.
and did that.
Yes, yes, a Ukrainian dude who really knew what he was doing. Actually, a couple of Ukrainians who really knew what they were doing.
How about when we go to Toronto in the fall, which we're planning on doing, how about we
Absolutely.
arrange for that?
That would be something, or any kind of ethnic treatment. It's like the Finns downplay. So it's only the Vihta or the Basta. It's like the whisking thing kind of a thing. But the Eastern Europeans, they have a way with that thing. It's
Mhm.
Lithuanians, Latvians. They way with that thing. So yeah, that definitely something that we should consider. So unfortunately, we didn't even scratch once again. We didn't even scratch the surface, but we are coming to the end of the episode. So, what are the final words? What are the? I'm looking at you, Julie. I'm always looking at you because I don't see your face too often. So, what do you want us to do when it comes to sauna?
Enjoy it, share it. There's so many, like, again, I think we were just talking about this last night on our walk. Like, we lived most of our lives not knowing anything about sauna, and that's such a sad existence, especially in these winter months in Minnesota. And as being Cambodian, my parents are Cambodian immigrants, like, we just hunkered down and just survived every winter. And it's only since we discovered sauna that my mom now looks forward to winter, because it gets cold enough where the reprieve from the hot room is nice to sit outside. So, I think there's a lot of people who would really enjoy it. I think it would benefit their lives mentally, physically, socially. Um, and they just don't know about it. And so I think just continuing to share it, the real experience, the depth, the richness that comes with Finnish sauna or Estonian sauna or whatever, just not the North American hot box in a room by yourself experience. So, I think the upper bench is doing a good job of that. And Christopher is a natural evangelist. And so, and have Eero build his own sauna.
That's a good point.
Love it.
That's a good point.
Love
Yeah.
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, when Eero starts building his sauna, I think we should definitely get up there and give him a helping hand. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited for that, Eero. But just Risto, thank you guys so much for sharing your story. I know, like Eero said, we barely touched the surface. I mean, even little Hazel here is just dying for more. And I'm thinking, yeah, we'll have to do a second episode or a part 2. But thank you guys. Again, this is a great way for people to connect. This is a great way for people to reset. If you work in a stressful environment, if you are constantly looking at your phone, or if you need something to just de-stress your life a little bit, sauna can be a lot of those things and more. So please give it a shot if that's something that you think you might need in your life.
Here, here.
Thank you, guys.
Risto here. I'm excited to announce the Upper Bench's first sauna meetup. Eero, Sam, and I have been talking about getting together with listeners for quite some time. Well, we finally decided to schedule it. We talked about doing an East Coast sauna circuit, or going to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, or even meeting in Finland. But our final choice is perhaps the best sauna city in North America. This city has Nordic spas, mobile saunas, and tons of excellent banyas. Perhaps you've guessed by now, we're going to Toronto. We're still in the planning stages, but the dates are set for November 7th through 10th. We plan on meeting up with the Finnish contingent, going to my favorite banya, getting some Venic treatments, meeting y'all, and having a bowl of top-notch Chinese noodles. If you're curious to get more details, you can sign up for the email list at our website, theupperbench.com, and let us know if you have any suggestions. So get your passport renewed, get a good banya hat, and stay tuned for more info. We look forward to steaming with you in November.
Oh, still recording.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Wait,
just turn it off
there we
when
go.
you have it.